Something will have gone out of us as a people if we ever let the remaining wilderness be destroyed. If we permit the last virgin forest to be turned into comic books and plastic cigarette cases. If we drive the few remaining members of the wild species into zoos or to extinction. If we pollute the last clear air and dirty the last clean streams and push our paved roads through the last of the silence. So that never again will Americans be free in their own country from the noise, the exhausts, the stinks of human and automotive waste. And so that never again can we have the chance to see ourselves single, separate, vertical and individual in the world. Part of the environment of trees and rocks and soil, brother to the other animals, part of the natural world and competent to belong in it.
Cheers. Look at that there, fire.
Without any remaining wilderness, we are committed wholly, without chance for even momentary reflection and rest, to a headlong drive into our technological termite life. The brave new world of a completely man-controlled environment. We need wilderness preserved, as much of it as is still left, and as many kinds. Because it was the challenge against which our character as a people was formed. The reminder and reassurance that it is still there is good for our spiritual health, even if we never once in 10 years set foot in it. It is good for us when we are young because of the incomparable sanity it can bring briefly as vacation and rest into our insane lives. It is important to us when we are old simply because it is there. Important, that is, simply as idea.
Hello, I'm Beth Ann, and it's wonderful being on BozemanArts-Live tonight, and I'd like to especially thank Thomas for creating this platform. I appreciate it not just because I can come on with Bozeman Film Celebration and BZN Film Rodeo, but also because all week long I can tune in and watch the other performances on the calendar. It's been great. So we started out with A Letter to Congress. This is a film that I really, truly appreciate and hope you did so too. We're talking tonight about the artistry of environmental stewardship. And to do this, we have several people we're gonna have a conversation with. And it's our intent that you will be inspired to be a better environmental steward and also to inspire others. So everybody that's on tonight, their websites do appear on the very bottom of this screening, as well as the BZN page on BozemanArts-Live. And I'd also like to draw your attention to the virtual tip jar. Anything that you can contribute to be really greatly appreciated. And all the funds will be equally distributed between Gallatin Valley Earth Day, the Sacajawea Audubon, and also the Wilderness Society. So let's open up the conversation. It's so great to have everybody on this Zoom call, and it's great partnering with you, Anne, with all the work that you're doing as the chairperson, the founding member of Gallatin Valley Earth Day. And I know all the work that you were doing leading up to it. It must have been incredibly crushing when you had to put a halt on all of it, all your scheduled events. But look at you, you've lined up so many fantastic online events and a terrific lineup this fall. Congratulations.
Yes, Gallatin Valley Earth Day is just thrilled to be partnering with the Bozeman Film Celebration to bring these two beautiful, interesting, and charming films to our online audience to celebrate Earth Day. I know both films tie in closely with issues that are near and dear to the hearts of people who live in Gallatin Valley and beyond, and people who care about the earth and really want to protect it and support it. I also think the audience will really appreciate the knowledge and perspective that our local experts, Scott and Paulette, have to offer.
And Scott, you're on board here. Scott Brennan, Montana State Director of the Wilderness Society. You know, you shared with me that Wallace Stegner, who wrote Letter to Congress, was with the Wilderness Society, correct?
That's right. Wallace Stegner served on our board for a number of years back in the 1980s, and his work during that time as an author and historian really shaped the Wilderness Society's understanding of its role in the world and our work and our priorities. And so it's always an honor to join an event where his work is featured, such as this film.
So, Scott, you have been interested in the wilderness for many years. Why does it touch your heart so greatly and motivate you to continue your work?
Well, I was really fortunate to grow up in a small town in the West and was raised by school teachers, and we couldn't afford cruises to exotic ports of call or expensive holidays, frankly. I was the oldest of 5 kids and both of my parents were educators. And so we spent many of our family vacations camping and fishing and hiking on public lands, sometimes wilderness and sometimes not. And so it's really something that I grew up with and have been fortunate to incorporate in my work throughout my career.
That's wonderful. You know, Scott, so many people are staying at home, you know, abiding by social distancing and perhaps with more time than usual. Can you please give us some action items? What can someone do right now to get inspired and to inspire others and to be more supportive for the health and well-being of our land?
Well, the Wilderness Society, since our founding, has worked really hard to create opportunities for people to help take better care of our public lands. And our mission today is to unite people to protect America's wild places. And our vision is a future where people and wild nature can flourish together, meeting the challenges of a rapidly changing planet. And that language resonates today in ways that it hasn't before. I think we're experiencing changes and challenges that none of us had contemplated even a few months ago. And so it is really important that people are first and foremost safe and observing guidelines for social distancing and safety and things like that. And at the same time, we're really fortunate here in the Gallatin Valley to have access to our public lands just steps away in some cases. And so we're asking folks first and foremost, when they are able to be outside, to be safe, but still to participate in the activities outdoors that they like, but maybe dial it back a little bit. Maybe take a walk on a trail or a jog on a trail instead of taking on the most challenging backcountry ski routes of the season right now. So really listening to the guidance that we're being given by our city and county and state leaders is paramount. But we are still really fortunate here to have access to those places.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to introduce the director of A Letter to Congress, Christopher Newman. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Christopher is in San Francisco, so we're so glad that he could join this call today. Chris, thank you. Thank you for filming A Letter to Congress. This was the opening film at BZN 2019. And from the first moment I saw it, and the many times I've seen it since, it's just touched my heart so beautifully. And I'm not the only one for sure. What has been the response that you've received?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for your kind words and for having me at this awesome event and for sharing the film and championing it. It's really cool. So yeah, as far as the response, it's been super amazing, surprising in certain aspects of it as well. We first launched it online in 2016 in partnership with HipCamp. And they really helped us kind of spread the word about the imminent threats to our public lands at the time from the Trump administration. And since then, it's screened in events and festivals all over the world with folks that connect with the bigger message of connection, stewardship and conservation of all of our public lands and wilderness spaces that we all love. And that response, you know, across the world has shown that Stegner's message really does still ring true today, not just in the US, but across the world. And that's kind of been the biggest sort of unexpected and delightful outcome in releasing the film.
Nice. I don't know if you're aware, but part of the BZN mission states that we highlight films that make a positive impact on audiences, stories that showcase the best of the human spirit while inviting a call to action, as we champion films that educate and enrich while they entertain. So I really find what you do lines up with that. So why have you been inspired to get behind films like this?
I've always been inspired by activism in combination with film. I think this kind of work works on many levels. You can have film and activism in fiction work. You can have film and activism in documentary, for sure. But in short form content like a letter to Congress, it works really well because it's kind of a compact form to get messages out. And I'm really inspired by kind of connecting with folks that see my work and then are inspired to act themselves, or maybe just even learn something new that they can then relay to other people in their lives. It's also really inspiring to me to meet folks that I would never meet outside of projects like this, and to help tell their stories, kind of help tell stories about everyday folks and issues that are important to them, and hopefully all of us. And a lot of times these stories are really underrepresented by the media and really need to be told. And that's definitely inspiring for me, creating this kind of work. And I just think there's something really beautiful in the merging of art and activism. And I really hope to see a lot more of that as we kind of come out of this pandemic.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Scott, on your website, there is a wonderful list of films spotlighting wilderness, both doc and narratives. This is your opportunity. Do you have a pitch you would want to give the film industry that would encourage films that would further benefit your mission?
Yes, so we're really grateful for the folks who pulled this film together. It's a great treatment of a really important letter written decades ago. There are great filmmakers working all over the country and all around the world today to raise public awareness of these wonderful places, the threats they face, the opportunities we have to take better care of them. And we're really grateful for the work that they do. And going back to the days when Wallace Stegner wrote this letter, he understood even then, 50 some years ago, that if we want to take care of these places into the future, we need to raise awareness. Film is great for that. The filmmakers that are working today, I think, are some of the best storytellers in all of human history, and they have all the technology and tools and the reach to do that. So step one is to raise awareness through storytelling. Step two is to help organize people around opportunities to take care of places like the Gallatin Range. And we incorporate film and storytelling and links to action opportunities in all of our campaigns. So yes, by all means, any filmmakers who are interested in becoming advocates and helping educate, connect, organize, and mobilize folks to take care of these places, drop me a line anytime. And for those of you who are already doing this important work, we really are grateful, because we couldn't do our work of protecting these places in perpetuity without partnerships with filmmakers and other storytellers.
That is great to know. I'll make sure that BZN does whatever we can to get that word out there, that there's, because people do films and they want to know that there's going to be the opportunity to get them out to an audience. Anne, you probably have some thoughts about this, because I know you love film, and that's why our relationship started between BZN and Gallatin Valley Earth Day. So do you have anything that you want to mention before we move into the second film?
Yeah, thanks, Beth Ann. I would just encourage people to check out the Gallatin Valley Earth Day Facebook page for our frequent postings that highlight films that inspire and inform us. Thanks.
Very, very good. And just so that everybody knows that's watching, at the end of this presentation, there's a long list of emails and websites that people can go to. So, Scott, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I would just like to thank the organizers and thank you for the opportunity to connect with folks through this platform, and really encourage everybody who's watching who wants to help ensure a vibrant and healthy and connected and climate resilient future for the Gallatin Range to click on over to gallatinpartners.org and be in touch with us. And thanks again for the opportunity. Really fun to be a part of this event tonight.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Anne and Chris. We will be following your great work. So now we're going to screen our second film. It's called A Place in the Garden. And this film was directed by a couple that are absolutely fascinated with hummingbirds, Christina Chano and Jeff Buss. We first screened this film at BZN 2019, and it was met with tremendous enthusiasm. Before the screening, I'd like to introduce you to Paulette Epple. She is the conservation chair at Sacajawea Audubon. Paulette, you told me that when you saw this film, it just was something you so appreciated. Can you tell me what inspired you so much?
Well, the film is just so beautiful. It's like a work of art. It's filled with beautiful flowers, hummingbirds, and people who care deeply about birds. It's really inspirational to see how these two couples have taken their yards and just transformed them completely into habitats for birds. And in the process, they've made beautiful paradises for themselves to live in too. But I have to say, I think the stars of the whole show are the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds themselves. They're just gorgeous. And the close-up photography and the slow motion photography brings them so close to you. You really feel their personalities in the process. So a wonderful film.
Great. Well, after the film, Paulette will be back presenting a PowerPoint called Landscaping for Birds, Invite Birds to Your Backyard. And there's lots of incredible information, lots to think about, lots to do if you're not having your time filled out, as so many of us are in that situation. And I know that Cashman's Nursery would be a great location to supply your needs for landscaping. So check them out, Cashman's. Thank you, Paulette, for all your work. I want to remind everyone about the virtual tip jar. Appreciate what you can offer. Enjoy the film, A Place in the Garden.
I remember the first hummingbird that we saw in the yard. He had these canna lilies that were left by the previous owners, and seeing this hummingbird sitting on the top of a flower really created interest in hummingbird, and that was quite a while ago.
Before we really learned about hummingbirds, Larry and I never realized how incredible they are.
We were both teachers. I was a physical education teacher and a coach, and my wife was a science teacher. And we were always very interested in nature. We bought this farm in 1988.
And when we moved here, we were so excited about making it a wildlife mecca.
Well, we've been feeding hummingbirds for about 17 years. When we met, Michael was very interested in hummingbirds. He said, I used to have them at a home where I lived, and I'm really interested in attracting them to our yards. We went to buy a feeder at the store, and the man who owns the store said, well, where do you live? And we told him. He said, well, you live in the city of Madison. You'll never be able to attract hummingbirds. You're just too much in the city. So we sought out to prove him wrong. We didn't see any hummingbirds until early August. And then we looked out one day and we saw 2 hummingbirds, and that's what started the whole thing. We didn't have a garden at that point or any other feeders. From that summer on, we were hooked.
With our land, it is specified for encouraging grassland birds. And the idea of it was, from the federal government's viewpoint, where farmers could not cultivate all of their land, but preserve it in a way that would be good for wildlife.
Unfortunately, when the price of beans and corn went up, more than 20 million acres were taken out of CRP and converted to beans and corn. More and more land is being developed and less habitat for birds, so that was our main reason to provide a place for wildlife. One of the big interests that we've had was to convert this area to attract birds. We put out a feeder or 2 and we seem to be attracting hummingbirds, and planted more and more plants that will bring in hummingbirds, whether it's flowers or shrubs or whatever it may be.
So now we are an oasis for wildlife.
Our first couple years, all we had were a few feeders and a few pots of Salvia splendens, which is a really low-tier hummingbird plant. And as we became more involved, we found out about other plants that were like magnets for hummingbirds. Flowers that hummingbirds like tend to be unfragranced because the fragrant flowers attract insects. So the most important thing is to never use insecticides in your yard to kill those small insects, because first of all, you could be also killing hummingbirds. Second of all, they need protein just like mammals do. So they depend on both small soft-bodied insects and nectar. So what we always recommend is to get some Cupvia, David Verity, and Salvia granitica to put into those pots. And then when you pair with 2 hummingbird feeders, you really have created a habitat for hummingbirds. So it can start very small and even stay very small. People were excited about what we were doing and, amazed that somebody could actually attract hummingbirds in the city of Madison. And from there, it just grew. Hummingbirds innately like the edges of forested areas. They can be comfortable around people, but they're very solitary birds.
Every bird is incredible, but hummingbirds are particularly extraordinarily incredible. And everybody immediately looks at them and sees them fly, and they look like a bug.
They're very, very territorial. You can move feeders further apart, but it's just in their nature. There's a bander in Arizona who calls them winged warriors, and she's absolutely right about that.
So you begin to watch the hummingbirds, you see how often they come to the feeders or how often they nectar on different flowers, and flowers that most attract them, or interaction between various hummingbirds.
There is no other bird that can even come close to it. The hummingbird can hover like a helicopter. And then the rest of the body, the way you learn about how they get food and catch bugs, they just really, truly are amazing. When they fly, they are just burning up their fats they have stored. And when they get to the Gulf of Mexico, go hours, maybe longer, before they can stop and eat again. So their weight gain is really important, and that's what they're doing when they stop in your yard and they're drinking out of the feeders. And that's why providing extra sources of nectar is really important.
interest in our hummingbird garden. The neighborhood association asked us if we would speak to a group of interested people about hummingbirds, and we had about 30 people show up. We only wish that we could get more young people interested in birds, so we've been trying to expand what we're doing into schools and groups of young people. So I think, youth is definitely our future.
My husband, Larry, began to take lots of wildlife pictures.
With all these pictures, we said we could probably put together some programs and present them in different places.
And we eventually used the ideas that we got from Kathy and Michael and then developed it in our own way, which were areas that we were interested in that they didn't do as much as we did.
We like to think that we inspired them to do what they're doing in terms of hummingbird education. Then, shortly after that, we decided to ask Mickey O'Connor to come band hummingbirds.
This year in the monarchs, and I've got some
groves, I would say, are 50%.
We need to learn more about what's going on with hummingbirds in the state, and our project is to get bands at as many hummingbirds as we can so we can start looking at longevity records for Wisconsin's hummers. We can learn more about their migration routes. So we're just hoping to get a good baseline of data going for future studies.
Patch your male, no gorget feathers.
It was a very exciting moment for us to see the very first hummingbird banded in our yard. There's a certain legitimacy when you have somebody banding hummingbirds in your state, because then you can start to document what you really have in terms of hummingbirds.
Look at that beautiful emerald. The predominant species here is ruby-throated hummingbirds. They have quite an extensive range. It goes up into Canada. Okay, ready? Fly it. And they have really strong site fidelity. And so all our sites we're visiting on or close to the same day each year. And we caught a few birds that were banded years prior. It's fascinating to me that these birds travel so far and then come back to the same site year after year after year. It's just, it's incredible. We were very fortunate to band an adult female rufous hummingbird in Fort Atkinson, and 3 weeks later she was recaptured in North Carolina by another bander.
4.14, she's a good weight.
4.14.
We take wing measurements, we measure the bill, the tail, get a weight of course, and just assess the overall health of the bird.
I feel she's bigger.
They maintain their weight. The measurements that she makes as the weeks pass, how she'll catch a hummingbird that she caught 2 days before and it's already gained all this weight in your yard.
Most of the birds we capture here are around the 3-gram weight limit, but to give you an idea, when they get down to the coast and they're going to make that journey across the Gulf, they can weigh 6-7 grams. They're super fat. I don't know how they get off the ground, but they need that fat to get them over the water. This time of year, in August through September, you'll see a large number of birds because all the offspring, the hatchers, are out and about and they're fueling up for migration. It's a 600-mile journey, and it's nonstop. If they stop, they'll perish. Typically, the males head back first, followed by the females, and then the youngsters go. Probably takes them about 30 hours to cross, and the hatchers are not following their parents. It's one of those incredible things in nature where it's built into their DNA. They just know where to go.
Definitely birds live life on the edge, and every minute of their day actually is oriented towards surviving. the way that we tend to live in our world, that all birds are really endangered.
So many species of our native birds, our neotropical birds, the birds that come here in the summer to breed, go south for the winter, are endangered and declining. It's becoming a serious problem. And the more you learn about birds, the more you realize that the reason that they're declining is because of what we are doing as human beings.
Hummingbirds, they're nectar eaters, but they also eat a tremendous amount of insects. So with habitat loss and pesticide usage, insects are declining. And essentially, we're starving our birds. So it's really important for people to eliminate the use of pesticides, plant native trees, shrubs, and flowers that birds like. Really all wildlife benefits, and especially for our pollinators, that's really, really important.
Hummingbirds are part of our natural world, and we've just come to enjoy their whole life cycle a lot more as the years have gone on.
Between 6 and 7, they can be really, really active. We call that hummingbird happy hour. So particularly in the front, there may be many, many hummingbirds, and you're welcome to stay around and watch our website for dates for when we do this again next year.
So thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful evening. We are just very excited to be involved in this work and bringing the world of hummingbirds to people who may never have the opportunity to experience it. We look forward to many more years of sharing and educating and inspiring people.
Well, we feel like we've really accomplished something by bringing in all these migratory birds. We never know what birds are going to be in our yard, so it's very gratifying to have developed this property to attract all this wildlife.
And so that's why we consider this paradise now.